Hi guys, I'm Aussie Villain. I do daily Football Manager content, so if you're not already subscribed, make sure you are doing so. And today we're going to be having a look at contracts, how to structure them, when to offer them, all that kind of thing. Now, if you look at your squad list over here, if you go up to players, you can go down to contract, and then you can see basically all the contract details there. Now, I'd like to have it sorted by when the contracts are expiring, so the ones expiring most recently, and then we go all the way down from there. This is a good way too if you want to see who are your high wage earners that potentially could leave if you're trying to get a budget under control. Again, as I say, this is a good way to do that. You can see how much people are on, and you often find yourselves shocked at how much some of your players are being paid. But anyway, so we're going to offer a new contract. We're currently at the end of the 2023 season, so the first season in game. So anybody that's sort of up next year, so if in this case, Denny Ings and Tyrone Mings, just to confuse me, you're going to want to get it done the summer, but right at the start of the summer, as soon as the season finishes. That way, if they're not going to sign a new contract, you have the summer to try and then sell them on to make sure you're not going to lose them for nothing. So Denny Ings, I found him turn into a just the reincarnation of Pele this season. So if we go to here, the contract, and you can enter into contract negotiations basically with the agent. So we're very interested in re-signing Denny Ings. He wants between 110 and 115 grand a week, which is roughly what he's on now, which seems very fair. Now you can contest it and see if he would be willing to go down. The other thing, of course, is playing time. So he wants to be basically a star player. Let's see if we can talk him down for being a star player. So he's gone down to he would be the majority of games, which is going to be either an important player or a regular starter, I would imagine. So we can agree with that. That's all well and good. And then we would want to go up here to enter into contract negotiations. Now, it's a little bit different if you are offering a contract to a player you're trying to sign. It would be a different screen that comes into your inbox, but ultimately it's going to bring you to this same thing when you go to enter contract negotiations with them. So it is indeed a regular starter. Now, the other promises that you can add here, you want to be a little bit careful. I try to just minimize the promises completely, because all that you can do when you promise a player something basically is break the promise and annoy them. Now, the few that you're going to see, I mean, future playing time, if this is someone if this is a youngster or potentially an older player as well. I mean, to be honest, Denny Ings is 30. We could actually start and wind his career down in a couple of seasons. So, for example, you would have here, and then he would go from a regular starter to a squad player. I wonder if he would agree to that, actually. Well, we might even try that, which is good. I mean, in a younger player, you'd want to go the other way, obviously. The one to be aware of is will allow the player to treat the club as a stepping stone. That is going to mean release fee. So if you can get rid of that, they will probably still ask for a release fee, but rather than it being locked in, you have a little bit more room to negotiate there with them. But we don't have to worry about that here. Ones that I would avoid, like the plague, signing a suitable player to help the player settle. I mean, players that they don't come. They don't come to bring friends with them. You're signing a player to come in and play for you. So that's one I would like to avoid. But just generally speaking, promises they're worth avoiding, because you can only break them really. So avoid that. So we'll select that. He doesn't want to be a squad player. That's fine. We can deal with that later on down the line. And so we'll go and have a look here. So 110 grand a week, a 1.8 loyalty bonus. Now, a good way I always find to start a contract negotiation. This is more with a player that you have now. If you're signing a player from another club, then their existing contract doesn't really matter. But it's a good idea just to see what they're on right now. So he's actually going to take a pay cut for us, which is absolutely brilliant. So if you just go down here, it might be behind my head, but hit reset. That takes it back to these current negotiations. So the loyalty bonus, that's basically you're going to pay that out. You can see there over the duration of the contract. So whatever, sort of divide the amount by the years, or it would be months, I suppose, wouldn't it? And that's how much you'll pay a month. Again, I mean, obviously all these sorts of things, you want to try and keep them as low as possible to limit the amount of money you're paying out. But equally, you want to try and also keep players happy. So we're looking at it, and the agent fee, as it suggests, that's a fee you pay up front, and that will come out of your transfer budget as well. So again, you want to limit that as much as you can, but keeping an agent happy can certainly help with negotiations. So a 2-year deal, that takes him to 32. I would be okay with that. Now, one other thing that you can do there, no, that's everything for that part. So bonuses and clauses. Now, appearance fee, so that's appearance fee, not a starting fee. So if he comes onto the pitch at any point during a game, 22 grand. If you scores a goal, obviously it's self-explanatory. Unused substitute is what it suggests. If they're on the bench, even if they don't come on, then you're going to be paying them 5.5. If they do come on, then you're going to be paying them the 22. So that's sort of what that means. And there's the season landmark goal. We'll go through all these in just a second here. So other bonuses, an assist bonus, which is a good one if particularly for, say, wide players, wing backs, full backs, central midfielders even. It's, as it suggests, that's what they'll get paid if they get an assist. Two that I like to have are Team of the Year bonus in the division and Team of the Year, top goal scorer in the division. Now, particularly top goal scorer, I like to max this one out. You can only have one top goal scorer. So if all your strikers get the 2 million bonus, it could be whatever your club can afford to offer, you're only going to have to pay out one, assuming that guy is in the top goal scorer, wins the Golden Boot. So it's a good motivation for a striker as well. So that's one I like to have. Team of the Year, you've got to be a little bit more careful with this one because in theory, you could have 11 players in Team of the Year. Are you going to? Realistically, no. And if you did, you'd probably win the league and you'll make a lot of money anyway. But yeah, maybe something a little more along the lines of 1.5 for that. But yeah, I think they're two very good bonuses to have. And we'll see if we can getting down to 100 grand a week here as well. International cap bonus, so that's an amount you would pay every cap they get for their country, and then you've got amounts that you would pay them as a sort of a lump sum for certain stages of certain competitions. I always think they're a player, they should be trying to win every competition they're in anyway, so I would avoid offering these, me personally. But if you're struggling to meet a wage demand, they're a good thing to add in. And, it's not a bad thing to have a player motivated to win a competition because they get a bonus for it. But, unless it's sort of to get the deal done, I would typically try to avoid that. For the sake of things, let's go back to 95. Let's see if we can really cutting back a little bit here. Now, all the clauses. This is where it gets interesting. So a yearly raise... yearly wage rise even. So it's sort of 5%, 10%, all the way up to 45%. We don't really want that in the contract if we can. So obviously if it was a 10% wage rise, which is typically what you'll get, so then each season, at the end of each season, his contract would go up first season by 9.5 thousand a week, and then it would go up by, what would it be, 10 point something, because it would be 10% of the new wage. So ideally, again, you don't want that, but a lot of players will want it in the contract, particularly younger players. So you'd want to keep it at least 10. I don't think you want it any higher than that. Top division relegation release wage drop. Now, this is something as particularly if you are, say, maybe a first season up and you're signing players on big Premier League wages, you're going to want to, if you are to get relegated, have a wage drop in there, whether it's 25%, 30%, 50%. I mean, you can decide. Again, you'd probably want it to be as big a drop as you can get away with, just in case you do get relegated. But I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about that. And it's only a 2-year deal anyway, so worst case scenario, we get relegated, it'd be 1 season. I'm willing to sort of take that risk. If it was a 5-year deal with a younger player, or maybe a player, say a 28-year-old, that in 5 years' time they're going to be that had that sell-on value, that might be a little bit different then. So you've got wage after reaching international appearances. So as it suggests, what the wage would go up to after 5 international appearances, so 105 grand a week. Not too bothered about that for Danny Ings, but it's again an option you'll have, and often players will want that in the contract. Landmark goal bonus. So we see he's got a bonus there, 20 goals of 250 grand, and landmark assist bonus. Now, which is exactly the same as the goal bonus, but for assists. The one that I like though is goals and assists combined, because I don't know if it's programmed into the game or not. What I don't want is my striker in a 50 sort of do I shoot, do I pass. I don't want him shooting because he wants to get a goal bonus. I want him taking the best option for the team. So I'll typically do a 20 and also then a 30 for a striker. Then if it's sort of the further back you go for a midfielder, it might be 15 and 25. For a defender, 10 and 20. And then 100, I'll do like the million for a 20, and then we can do 2 million for 30. So again, if he's performing for me on the pitch, I don't mind paying this money out. Now, if you're a smaller team, obviously it's the same principle, but the amounts will just be much, much lower. Then we've got 1 year extension after league games in the final season. So in 2 years' time, after 15 games. If he plays 15 league games, then that would, and again, this is appearances, it's not just starts, then he would get an extra year on his contract with the terms of the contract at the time. So the one thing I'm not 100% sure is if you were to have a 10% wage increase, I'm assuming you'd still get that 10% wage increase the next that extra season as well. I'm not 100% sure about that. Just be aware of that. I'm not 100% sure. 1 year extension after league games, if avoiding relegation in the final year of his contract. Now, this can be very useful if, so say you've been promoted up to the Premier League and you're signing somebody that you don't really want them to, we don't want to sign them to a 2-year deal, for example, but you do kind of want them for a second year if you're in the Premier League. So you could say go down to 1 year, and then if you play 15 games and we avoid relegation, I mean, you could even, if you definitely want them to stay, if you avoid relegation, you could even just have 5 games, so it's basically a slam dunk if you stay up. So that's something that you could do there as well. It's just sort of a way around guaranteeing the extra year of the contract, getting the player to agree to it. That might be a little bit more tricky. Optional contract extension by the club. I find this one really useful, particularly if you have really good young players, or just any young players, to be honest. You can sign them, because often they'll only be able to sign a 2 or 3 year deal when they're younger. If you have this optional extension, then you can trigger it in the final year of their contract, and you're signing them to, say, a 4-year deal, even though the initial deal was a 3-year deal. I think it's actually legally required that certain age players can only sign certain length contracts, and this is a good way to get that extra year in. Equally, anytime, it's always good to have that option instead of having to renegotiate a whole new contract. Just trigger a year's extension. I mean, you can go up, doesn't have to be 1 year, you can go up to 3 years. It just, again, depends what you can get the player to agree to under certain circumstances. If you have a superstar, you might get them to sign a 5-year deal with a 3-year extension. You've essentially locked them down for 8 years. Again, the issue is getting the player to agree to that. But if you can, it's absolutely brilliant. Minimum release fees. Now, minimum release fees come in many, many ways. Most people are probably aware of what they are. You typically don't want them. The one situation I have found them useful, actually, is if I found it useful on my Impossible Dreams series. So at Barlatown in Wales, at H&W Welders in Northern Ireland, if you have a really good player, say put a 60, 80, whatever it is, release fee on them, if you get that much for them, brilliant, you'll take the money and reinvest it. But what it does sometimes is it stops the board or the chairman from accepting lower bids because you've got that minimum release fee. So if you find that your chairman is accepting bids you don't want them to accept, or chairperson, I should say, try adding a huge minimum release fee, and I found that it stopped it. Now, that was a couple of FMs ago, whether this is going to be the same in this version, but it can be useful for that. But typically, you don't want that. You want to sell a player for what you want to sell them for, not a prearranged amount. But sometimes there's just no option. You have to have it in there. The player's not going to negotiate, and you just get stuck with it. And you've just got to try and negotiate a new contract as soon as possible, removing it. Now, that is just any fee. There's no terms or conditions about the club's situation. It's just anybody that comes in. Now, there's a foreign clubs. Now, you often see this in Brazil, that what they'll do is they'll have one for domestic clubs and one for foreign clubs. Now, where this can be useful, ideally, you don't want to sell your player that's going to come back and play against you at some point. So what you could do is you could have a minimum release fee for domestic teams of, say, 80, or it could be 60 if they go somewhere else outside of your league. So that is an option if you want to have a minimum release fee. I kind of figure it doesn't matter where they're playing. If they're not playing for me, I don't really care where they play. You'll sometimes find that they will be minimum release fees for clubs in Europe, for clubs in a higher division. Now, because this particular season with Aston Villa, we finished 3rd and we're already in the top division, they're not going to be options for us, but you will find them there as well. And often there's not much you can do about it. If a player wants to go to a club in a higher division, or they want to go and play in Europe, it's tough to stop them. They're going to have that minimum release fee in. But again, if your highest amount and the most possible conditions in your favour is what you want to try and do there. Relegation release fee. Now, that is if you are relegated. It's basically a minimum release fee if you're relegated. Again, if you're one of these clubs that you're not sure if you're going to be able to stay up or not, it is sometimes worth adding it in. Especially, I mean, you wouldn't want to sell Danny Ings for 10 million, but just so that the player may want to leave, and you may not necessarily want them to leave, but then if they complain, you can say, well, you've got a minimum release fee. If that, if that comes in, then you can go. And it kind of just helps you a little bit in sort of stopping players complaining about not leaving, or you rejecting bids for them. So it can be useful for that on that front. And often you'll find players will want it if they're signing for a team that is sort of lower half of the table anyway. The other two here, you've got a sell-on fee percentage. Now, this is one I avoid like the plague. I will only add this if I'm absolutely desperate to sign a player and I'm out of other options. What this basically means is, so if we have, say, 10%, which is often what players will ask for, if you sell him for 10 million, he gets $1 million of it. Now, they get sign-on fees, they get wages, they don't get transfer fee as far as I'm concerned. So that's something that I avoid like the plague, as I say. And the final one here is an injury release clause. This is kind of the Michael Owen, Andy Carroll clause. So if they get injured, if they get a long-term injury, then you can just release them, sort of to cancel the contract. It's a good one if you're signing a player with a injury history, and they, you get them all the time. They're good players, and you'd like to have them, but they typically are going to want a higher wage. And what you don't want to do is get stuck paying that wage if they're injured. This is a very good clause to have in there. Players, in my experience, do not want that in their contract, which is absolutely fair enough from their point of view. So, I mean, you could add it to any contract, to be honest, but if you can get them to accept it, do it. But again, getting them to accept it, you're going to basically have a player that accepts they have an injury history, and they need that to get a contract with a club, never mind your club. So those are all the options. You can also see down here, you can adjust the budget. So if you have money in the transfer budget, you need money in the wage budget to get a contract in, you can scroll back and forth there. And the other thing you can do is interact with the board. The most times I think this is useful is if the player's maybe a little bit outside the budget that they've given you. So you can kind of go to the board and say, we need to give Danny Ings a contract, or whatever the situation is, and they'll either agree or they'll disagree. I mean, in this situation, we don't need to worry about it because we don't have any problem getting the contract done, but that is an option there as well. So let's suggest these terms with the add-ons that we've added in, and there we go. So we've got him for 15 grand a week less than what he asked for. And yes, we have to pay out big bonuses, but only if he's doing a wonderful job for us. So yeah, very, very happy to get that deal done. Welcome to, or he's going to stay at the club, is Danny Ings. But if you've enjoyed that, of course, make sure you hit thumbs up. There are plenty more tutorials to watch, or you can come and join me on the impossible dream as we try and win the Champions League in Iceland. That's going to be tough. Take care.